Karen, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am. Okay, Sean, would you like me to start or?
Okay,
Yes.
I am.
You want to
Yes.
set the ground rules, and then
Okay.
Dr. Thorough will take it from there.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Lee. I'm with the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Want to just set a little bit of ground rules. As attendees, you will not be able to speak. You can raise your hand until we may have a time frame in there, or you can put your questions in the chat box so that we will be able to respond to you accordingly. We're trying to make sure that everybody is able to participate and fully get the benefits of the services that we're providing this evening. We will allow you to speak at a certain time. We can't unmute you so you can speak, but because of past history, we found out that this is the best way to proceed. So with that, I'm turning this over to the staff. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Good evening. My name is, I'm Dr. Deborah Thrower, and I'm a landowner as well as an assistant professor at St. Leo University, undergraduate social work. And I'm going to give space for my co-moderator to introduce himself. Sean.
Good evening. My name is Sean Bowler. I am a remote landowner for a tree farm in Southwest Arkansas, and it's a pleasure to be here to share my experiences and learnings over the past years with you.
Thank you, Sean. We do have an agenda tonight. If we could pull that up and just give our audience an idea of what our agenda looks like and some of our guest panelists. Is that possible, Karen? Can Karen hear us? There it goes. Okay. We can get that centered there. Okay, it was up and then it's down. Okay, so we'll get started then. We were anticipating Dr. Henry English, Small Farmer Program Director, and I believe that Karen is going to say something on his behalf in his absence. Karen? There it goes. Thank you. There's our agenda tonight. If we can expand that just a little bit for our audience. Thank you. This is our agenda for the evening. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Let me stop that share. Okay, sorry for the attire. I didn't know that I was going to be presenting. I thought I was just going to be behind the scenes. Dr. English had another engagement, so I'm stepping in for him. I do want to welcome everyone. Want to tell you again about the Keeping It in the Family program. This is one of the most beautiful programs that I know around. We have an excellent team that is doing just a wonderful job. We are just so very proud of our team. We have, for the first time, because of our team's effort, been able to surpass the max that the state had allowed us as far as the monies that were set aside for landowners in the Keeping It in the Family program. We have over the 300,000 that they normally set aside for us, which is great. I mean, this is the first time we've been able to reach that goal. And it has not been I cannot understate the importance of this team effort that we have had about getting the information out so that we can be of service to our landowners. So I really do applaud our team and the efforts that they are doing. This is because of our passion of wanting to see people succeed. That's just the baseline of it. Our job is about service and we're all fully committed to it, but from the leadership in Candy Williams, all the way down to little bitty me who's behind the scene. And the people that are out there in the field going and telling us things that we don't know, opening our eyes to things with our consultants and our conservationists. I'm just so very proud of them. And so from that aspect, we just want to tell you that the word is getting out and we are still committed to going farther. And we're just hoping that because we've exceeded that, we are praying that we'll get more monies, but we're going to still utilize everything that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Boy, no one could have said that as well as she did. That is on point. Thank you for that thorough overview. At this particular point, we're going to show some poll results from when we had our first session in March. And Sean Bowler is going to present some key takeaways from when we first had our session back in March. That was our very first session. Sean, take it away. I think you're on mute, Sean.
Technology is a wonderful thing when you know how to work it.
Yes, it's wonderful.
But good evening, everybody. I appreciate this opportunity to come before you, and I'll try to be quick. I'm probably going to be a little hurried, but I hope you'll excuse me for respecting your time and trying to hit our marks here. But in March 7th of this year, we had our first empowerment webinar, and we gave the audience, you, an opportunity to speak your mind on some questions that we were looking for to give us greater insight to leverage those points that Karen spoke about earlier, so we could go to our funders and more importantly, make sure we're servicing you, the forest landowner, properly. So this slide sort of gives you an idea of who our audience is. We feel like we're reaching our audience effectively. The second question we asked is, would you consider yourself a remote, which I consider myself. Most of you all are probably in the Midwest, Arkansas, Texas, that area. I'm here, it's 4 o'clock in sunny California. And as I said earlier, my family tree farm that I share with about 30 heirs is in Southwest Arkansas. But this chart here shows that 64% of our audience in some way, shape, form, or fashion is a remote landowner. 28% of our audience tonight are actually boots on the ground on their farms on a regular basis, this is really critical information for us understanding our mix. So by understanding our mix, this will allow the team to develop the proper content and resources that hopefully will be beneficial. We also asked the question, which subject is your highest area of interest? We need to know how to engage you. We want to make sure that your interest and needs are met. And this sort of gave us a lot of insight. I think this is probably the most powerful slide out of the deck. But, family engagement, because most of us are dealing with heirs and heirs property, having a roadmap and understanding how we navigate through this journey that we're on called forest land ownership and everything that goes with it. And then understanding some of the legal issues of trust and LLCs and clear title that help us, again, navigating those relationships. Just speaking on that clear title, 67% of the audience feel that they do have a clear title, 33% don't. So that's a significant audience that we can target some opportunities, be it education or professional resources. A few are on the line tonight and going to speak to you about things that may be beneficial to you in achieving clear title. And you may have noticed I went from question 3 to question 5. That's not a typo. Question 4 was, would you be willing to be a presenter and engage with your fellow peer-to-peer landowners? And as a result of that question being asked back in March, tonight on our agenda, you will have one of those individuals that stood up and came forward and wanted to present. And I'm hoping that in today's polls that there'll be more of that taking place as well. But again, do you have a farm number for your property? This is very important because of the conservation services and interactions that we do with government agencies. You really have to have that farm number, and we're here to help give you guidance to get through that. Do you have knowledge about conservation practices available to help restore your land? This is a biggie. A lot of us don't, myself included. I don't have as much knowledge as I feel I need, but again, with our team here, we're going to look for those opportunities to provide financial education, industry resources, and financial resources to help you put those practices in place. And then, does your family have clear goals for the land? You know, this is really a powerful slide as well. 50% of us are on the log, on the fence, and we want to move you to having that as a yes answer, that you have clear goals, because that's how you best enhance your farms and reach generational wealth goals that you may have set for you. Did this workshop increase your knowledge about the land? We feel happy that everybody feels that we are sharing positive information. And then last but not least, does this type of workshop truly benefit you as a landowner? And we're happy to see that you feel that we are providing a benefit to you, and we hope that you engage. It's really important that you engage in the poll at the end of this segment and engage with our presenters throughout tonight's seminar, our webinar. With that, I'll turn it back over to Deborah to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Very informative, and I hope our listeners would agree that that information was very helpful when we put that out during our first session. Our next presenter is Miss Dora Woods. She's a landowner, and she accepted the challenge in May when we asked Miss Dora to consider our homework assignment, where she was going to present information with her family history. So Miss Dora, if you want to pull your slides up, you have the screen share privileges.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Little did I know when I answered that question that I would be presenting tonight. It's a trick question, I guess.
Yes, it is.
But I will talk to you tonight regarding my family history genealogy. I am a descendant of William Henry Jackson Sr. He is my great grandfather. Okay, let me figure out how to work this. All right, there we go. So just some background. This is William Henry and his wife Eliza Ann, and shown here are their birth dates. They were both born in the 1860s, died not too far apart. Eliza died in 48, and we called William Henry Papa Henry. So Papa Henry died in 1953. They bought 80 acres of land in southwest Arkansas in Columbia County. This is located near McNeil. I don't know if anybody knows of that area. This is Highway 79 on the map that I have shown here. And College Hill Road runs along this area. This area is called the St. Matthew Community. There's a church there called St. Matthew Community. This is the deed that from the purchase of the land. It was purchased in 1919. So some of the things I'll talk to you about tonight are what I knew about the family history, what I needed to find out, how I performed the research, how I made contact with those people after I collected some information, and how the information was documented. So let's start about what I knew. Obviously, you know, I knew my great-grandfather's name. My mother talked about him all the time. My grandmother, they talked about him. I knew his children. I knew the names of, these are all of his children. I knew all of their names. I even knew some of them. They were still, some of them were still living when I was born. Some of the children, I knew some of this information again because, you know, my grandmother talked about them all the time. Some of the children died as a child or as an adult, no descendants, and some of the children sold their interest. So these are the children, the 3 that died as children or adults with no descendants. And then the red X's show the descendants who sold their property to other family members. And again, I knew this information because my mother shared it with me. So I needed to find out contact information for all those heirs, descendants. I needed to know who was living, who was deceased. How did I do that? I made calls to family members that I had their contact information. I searched this familysearch.org, which is a free website. I used familytreenow.com, which is also free. I Googled, and I used ancestry.com, which requires a subscription. So how did I contact the people? Again, I called some of those relatives once I had their phone numbers. Of course, they didn't know who I was, but I explained to them who I was and why I was calling. And then I wrote letters to other relatives that I received addresses for, or where I found their address on the web, or people that I thought might be the relative, because sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. But luckily I was able to find most everyone. And if I didn't find them, I found somebody that was maybe a relative and they passed the information along. So how did I document that information once I found it? I updated the family tree that I showed you previously with all the names. And this particular, I don't know if I can enlarge that, but this particular tree is for my grandmother, my mother's mother, and all of the descendants. And this particular group is 33 people. I will tell you that there are almost 100 people in this list. I also created a Word document and a spreadsheet also. I used both, listing the names and contact details. And I started with the immediate children, the heirs, and I descended through the grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and in some cases, great-great-grandchildren as was needed. And this, again, is the list for my grandmother. I know that was pretty quick, but let me share some other information before I start taking questions. I created this family tree, I'll go back to that, using the Smart Design organizational chart in PowerPoint. And that particular layout was shared with me by ALCDC, that's the Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation. I attended one of their meetings and they were talking about, you know, you need to create a family tree. And I had sort of started that because I started with the list, but I didn't have this actual diagram. So this was really helpful to me to lay it out and see it, you know, in a visual way. Talking about my use of Ancestry, I purchased a subscription, but you can use Ancestry at the public libraries. They have subscriptions, and if you have a library card, most libraries will allow you to use the website there. And also Rhonda Butler is a really good resource at the library, Rhonda Stewart, I'm sorry, at the library at the Butler Center. She really helped me and introduced me to Family Tree Now. So that gives you some resources that you can use to research some of this information. And with that, questions?
Are there any questions in the chat? We see one comment where it says that another person is also from the same area. Person says, my land is in Columbia County. Hello, neighbor. So someone is reaching out to you. That's Miss Janet Casey, it looks like.
Okay.
And
Don't
it
know the
says-
name, but yeah.
Noxby
Hello.
Community, says Noxby Community, something like that. Does that sound familiar?
I'll have to ask my cousins about that. I've never heard of that.
Noxby, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. You have a few minutes before we move to the next section, but Ms. Dorr, can you tell us, can you speak about, you certainly showed the successes of what you've done and the outcome of that. Can you discuss some of the challenges, like when you tried to reach people and then you found out that they weren't the right person, but they may have led you to someone else? Can you speak to some of the challenges and how you overcame those challenges, please?
Sure.
Also, before you get started, there is one hand raised in the chat.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Before she gets started. Oh, several questions are coming up. Thank you, Ms. Woods. Okay. How far up are we gonna go, Karen? It
We'll
looks
take the
like,
hand from Jerry Simpson real quick.
okay, take that. You want to take that,
Unmute
Sean?
yourself, Jerry. Or can we unmute? Jerry, can you unmute yourself?
I don't know if it's allowed to do that. Perhaps.
I allowed him to speak.
Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
Jerry, while you're getting your microphone together, why don't we go ahead and take a question or two? I think the first question came from Delisa Jones. Miss Woods, how have you benefited from creating your family tree with the management of your land?
Well, quite honestly, I'm not sure I have benefited yet.
Trust me, you have.
Well, I say that because, as I said, there's almost 80, 90 people involved, and you have to get all those people to agree to do something, and I haven't been able to do that. The title isn't clear, for one. It's still in my great-grandfather's name, but I do know, I have a copy of all the deeds, so that has been a benefit because I do know who the owners are, number
Exactly.
one. And it's allowed me to do some things with being able to get a survey done on the land. And that was through the help of the Keep It in the Family project, which I'm most thankful for. And I did also I paid for an appraisal of the forest, the timber on the land. So, I've known about this land all my life. I used to play down there in the woods and the trees. So it's been very helpful.
Well, let me also share a benefit that you may or may not know. By you doing that, you've prepared yourself, or I should say better prepared yourself, to work with the legal professional to clearing your title. And as a result, you save, I'm going to say thousands of dollars, depending upon the legal hourly rate that you get, but it could potentially be thousands of dollars of savings by what you're doing, what you've done. That's just one benefit.
Yes, thank you for that.
Another question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say certainly, because I actually did consult some attorneys, and what they want is kind of ridiculous.
It's high, but it's well worth it with the right attorney.
Right.
We've got Janet Casey. Did you use any professional services? For example, a title search for the land title and deeds?
I did use a title company because there was one sale that I wasn't certain about. My mother had told me about it, but I couldn't find the deed. My sister and I had actually gone to Magnolia to the county office and found some of the deeds, but there was just one we couldn't find. So they were able to find that. So yes, that might be helpful.
Terry Carlberg, Did you have any heirs that were irresponsive or unlocatable?
Yes, actually, there's probably half of them are irresponsive. They just won't cooperate or they won't call. They just agitate.
I
They
hear
won't, they won't call you to get the answers, even though I gave them my phone number, my email address, my address, everything. They could call me and ask me questions, but they won't. There's very few that I think are that I haven't located. I'm going to say less than 10%.
you. Okay.
Good.
And then there are questions about the appraiser for your area. And you've already answered the question about the attorneys that you use. So you are using attorneys at this point to clear
I'm
the
not
title.
using an attorney right now. I have,
Okay.
but right now I'm not. So
Stephanie,
I can give you the names of the attorneys. The people I used are in Little Rock. And I can share that name.
there was a request for sharing a contact for your appraiser.
Yes.
So if you could put that in the chat at some point, that would be helpful.
And I can share, although it wasn't asked, but I can also share the name of the company I used.
Oh, good. Very helpful.
Stephanie Flowers is also asking, I should say Senator Flowers is also asking, are you sharing the information with your family tree? How are you interacting with your family when it
I
comes
have
to this?
shared the family tree with some members. I haven't shared it with everyone. In my letter that I sent to them, I explained to them in text form the land history, but I haven't shared the actual diagram with everyone. But I have shared it with some. The ones who call me and ask, yes.
Yeah, I think it's important that you share that, and you clearly have a plan for the land, and that's the reason for the family history. And for those in the audience that weren't with us last time, Ms. Woods is responding to a homework assignment that we gave on genealogy and understanding how your genealogy and these family trees lead in directional activity toward your goals in developing a roadmap. Because if you're going to clear the title, you got to know who's on the title, who's not on the title. And this is just one process in that roadmap. And you've clearly done a great job in pulling that together. And that's going to pay so many dividends. We have one last question and then we'll move on to our next speaker. How did you deal with unlocatable or irresponsive heirs, and what sort of support has Keep It in the Family given you in that regard?
Well, I haven't dealt with them very well because they're still not responding. What I have requested was for some family members to reach out to their immediate family, because they have more relationships, better relationships than I do with the people, and to ask if they wanted to have a family meeting. Would that be helpful to them? I haven't heard back from anybody. So it's not going very well. I really need to figure out, what do I need to do next? One of the things, and I'm almost to the point where I'm about ready to just say, forget it, because I have been working on this for years.
Don't take that road. And I think one of our speakers tonight can give you some direction on what your next steps might be and how it would be profitable to you. But don't give up. You've taken.
Well, and I'll say the reason people don't respond is because they think I'm trying to take their land. They think I want all the money. They think, although I did ask them to let me have the money because things need to be done.
That's right. Sean knows, we know that all too well. The fiscal piece. But stay encouraged, Ms. Doris. Stay encouraged, because you're doing the right thing. And it's not always popular to serve in those leadership roles, and try to include that younger generation and see if you can get a better response. But we'll try to be your source of connections to keep you encouraged.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you. Before you go on, just let me say thank you all for giving me this opportunity. Although I
Thank
did
you for
not-
accepting our homework challenge.
You're welcome.
And
Exactly.
we eased it in. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. And others are saying, don't give up. Our next presenter is with us. Thank you, Ms. Woods. Our next presenter, Mavis Gregg, she's the director, Sustainable Forest, and it says AA Land Retention Project, American Forestry Foundation, and tools to manage air property, air shares, empowerment air shares. And there her slides are. Thank you. They're beautiful. And take it away, Mavis.
Thank you. And Mr. Bowler, Ms. Woods, you helped set my presentation up for the next discussion around what you can do and things that are important to do as it relates to your heirs property. So as Dr. Thor mentioned, I am Mavis Gregg, and I'm an attorney. So most of my work has been with death and dirt. So helping people plan for when they can't take care of themselves and plan for when they pass away and manage their assets. I also work with heirs property owners, and in 2019 became the director of the Sustainable Forestry and African American Land Retention Program, which UAPB is a partner in, one of the anchor partners among 7 other anchor partners. And I also have a company called AirShares. So today I'm wearing my AirShares hat. AirShares is a company that's building legal technology that supports families who maintain ownership of real estate as a source of intergenerational wealth. So we're first going to talk about heirs property. I know that you probably all are familiar with it, but we're going to do a little presentation around how heirs property works. And then I'll talk about some of the challenges and the incentives, and then explain what AirShares is. And then we can answer questions. If my slides will advance. All right, so this is a family tree, and I want to encourage you to use the chat box because I am going to ask a question or two. But this is a very typical family tree. If we start at the top of the tree where those 2 light blue boxes are, let's imagine for today that that's a married couple who has acquired 40 acres of land, and they have 4 kids. And so these lilac colored boxes are on the first row, the 4 boxes. That's our first, that's the kids of our married couple. And that's normal. People get married, they have kids. And then 3 of the kids got married. So that's the yellow boxes. All of the kids had children. So that's the peach colored boxes. And there's even some great grandchildren. So this family has grown over 4 generations. And let's imagine that those folks that have an X in their box are deceased. And so thinking about this family that has 40 acres of land that was acquired by the first couple, or the married couple, who then had kids, and some of the couple is deceased, some of the kids, or all the kids are deceased, one of the spouses is deceased, some of the grandkids are deceased. And let's imagine for today, let's imagine that everyone who is deceased, the order of passing away goes from the top to bottom. So starting with the parents and down. And then let's also imagine for today that, like most families, no one had wills or some sort of estate plan or succession plan for their estates. And so based on your understanding about how inheritance works, using the chat box, let me know how many people you believe are owners today. So again, everyone passed away everyone with an X passed away. Everyone, or the order of passing away goes from the top to the bottom. The yellow boxes are spouses. The lilac boxes are the children of the original owners. And then the peach colored boxes are some grandchildren. So based on your understanding about how inheritance laws work, how many owners do you think? So I see 15, 16, 16, 16. Okay, 22. So you're telling me one thing is that we don't agree who the owners are, and it can be confusing, and that's real. That happens. Now, this is kind of a trick question because I'm based in North Carolina and I'm not licensed in Arkansas. And while I could look up Arkansas inheritance laws, I actually counted my number based on North Carolina. And so if we were in North Carolina, we would have 16 owners. So kudos to those who got the right number. That's actually never happened. So this club is this group is the work is working. So yeah, we went from 2 owners down to 1. So when the first spouse passed away, the property went to the surviving spouse. And when they passed away, the property went to the 4 kids. So we went from 2 to 1 to 4. And then after that, and I'm sure Ms. Woods would affirm this, the numbers get even more complicated. And I'm sure many of you have that same experience in your own family if you have heirs property, but the number of owners increases over time. And then we also don't really have control over how that happens because we don't know who the ownership goes to until someone passes away. And so the set of laws that we rely on to trace or to inform of who gets property when you don't have a will is the intestate succession laws. And in North Carolina, it's pretty straightforward at the top. You know, if you, in fact, every state looks to the side to see if there's a spouse, and they look down to see if there's descendants. They're always going to check that first. But then if it's a mixture of folks, if you have a blended family, etc., it gets more complicated. And so again, you don't know who's getting what until the date of death. And then it really depends on the statute, your relationship, and the number of other people involved. Some other characteristics of heirs property, aside from not being able to predict who the owners are and plan for that kind of arrangement, is that the way that the family owns the property, or the way that the family manages ownership over generation, is through inheritance. And that's actually not a bad thing. I mean, it's part of the American dream. And you know, people are inheriting property as a right. They also own it as tenants in common. So that's a very specific bundle of legal rights. Married couples have a very unique bundle of rights that include survivorship. Tenants in common have a very different set of rights. Part of that includes that it requires unanimous decision making. And so regardless of the value of any owner's share, they have the same value of a vote. Everyone's vote counts if they're an owner. Individual owners also have the right to sell their share or transfer their share to whomever they want while they're alive. And so that particular right actually often leads to loss of the family property, because people will transfer the property to third parties who then use this other right, the right to seek partition, as a way to become the sole owner of the property. So the right to partition is a legal right. It's very legal, but this particular right has actually been used to dispossess lots of families across the country of their heirs property by people, often by third parties who aren't really vested in the family legacy and the intergenerational wealth, but are instead seeking some sort of financial gain. So aside from those things that I just described, as Mr. Bowler mentioned earlier, one of the difficulties with that heirs property owners face is that they can't prove ownership, or that it's very difficult to prove ownership. It's difficult to find an attorney, not just because attorneys are expensive or some attorneys are not nice people, but also because it's this very unique set of skills and it's very hard work. You have to really know how to work with families. You have to learn how to be a counselor. You have to be a planner, a strategist. And so it can be really difficult to find that kind of legal support. And it's also very expensive to resolve. And then those who are unable to address the heirs property challenges often lose millions, collectively millions in wealth and financial assistance. Oops. and just to, the issues don't just stay with the family, the issues actually spread to the community. That with the threat of loss, with conflict, with undermanagement, there's often disruption of food systems and supply chains, such as timber, in areas where there are high concentrations of heirs property, as well as affordable housing. Unfortunately, there are numerous stories of families losing their home that they actually used to live in, and then have a less affordable option for their new home. And then, of course, natural resource protection and economic blight. So those are just a few of the intersectional issues that are challenges that exist with heirs property. But what we want, and why UAPB is so awesome for their work with landowners, is we want resiliency. We want agricultural and environmental stewardship. We want to build and sustain intergenerational wealth. And we want families to have legal standing. Legal standing refers to the right to defend or protect oneself or one's property in court. And heirs property owners, if they don't have clear title, if they don't have confirmed ownership, often don't have or have difficulty proving legal standing. And so we want to change that. We want families to actually be able to use their real estate as a resource for them and for the community. And so some of the things that are important to take action on if you own heirs property is confirming the ownership. And so that's tracing the history of ownership to the present. And so similar to what Mrs. Wood shared with us, it does involve the family tree in most cases. And that's because the family tree or the last deed of record is from an earlier period, which I'll share more about. But confirming ownership is very important, and often the first thing that families need to do in order to take action on other areas. Ideally, families would maintain their ownership of family property through an entity owner, which allows you to create your own structure, which allows you to create your own management structure. And that can include things from how decisions are made, who gets to make decisions, how the property is used, how the property shouldn't be used, etc. But it just centralizes the management structure as well as the succession of ownership, because the entity will be the owner. It's just who manages it and who benefits from it changes over time, but you all get to set the rules. The other thing that it's important to take action on if you have heirs property is developing some written guidance and legal documents on how the property is used. I just spoke to a woman last week whose family was really upset because they thought one of the relatives had sold the family property out from under them. And it was very sad because it had been in the family for a long time. It was in a historic area of Oklahoma, a Black settlement in Oklahoma. And I was able to locate the documents and inform her that her family actually in the 90s had transferred the property to another family member, and they just never communicated that message to anyone. And so once those people had passed away, everyone just assumed that uncle's house was still family property, but it wasn't. And so then they had a lot of heartbreak 30 years later because there wasn't that guidance that the family had. So it's really important to have guidance. It's also important to have legal documents, which can often feel pretty transactional when you're talking about families, but it helps provide some sort of structure upon which everyone can rely on. Of course, farm and tract numbers are important, and we know that Farm Bill 2018 provided new criteria for heirs property owners to obtain farm and tract numbers. As well, FEMA has expanded their eligibility criteria to obtain disaster relief. I still think there's room to go before those two programs are ideal for heirs property owners, but at a minimum, your family, if you have heirs property, should be thinking about how you can take action on each of these things. And it's not easy, but I do think there's some hope coming forward, which I'll share about in a minute. So going to the process of confirming ownership. And Ms. Woods was talking about, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you, but I'm laughing at myself because I was thinking, you know, one of the challenges is really, you really are paying a lawyer to build a family tree. And when I closed my practice, my hourly rate was $250 an hour. And that's because doing this is very intense, complex work. So I hope someone is recognizing your work, Ms. Woods, but you have to essentially build a paper trail. If you look at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, in this scenario, the family became, the property came into the family in 1948 through a deed, and that's the last public record of the ownership. And so I, as in my role, have to trace the ownership and build a paper trail using death records, using birth records, all kinds of other records besides deeds. You also have to do complicated math, which most attorneys are not good at math. You have to source documents from multiple jurisdictions. If you think about Black families, for example, Black families, a lot of Black families own real estate in the South, but many of the family members, as the survey showed earlier, live remote from the property. And that is because many of our family members were part of the Great Migration, you know, moving away from all the violence in the South, moving away to opportunities, or presumably to opportunities. But what that translates to now, when we're doing heirs property title searches, we have to source documents from multiple states. And that also is a lot of work. There's also inefficient crowdsourcing. I feel like Ms. Woods and I should be buddies now, but you know, you're having to get information from a lot of different people, and that can also take a lot of time. And then tree building is inadequate. Ancestry.com is great. Family Search is great. There's a lot of tree builders out there, but none of them are designed specifically for heirs property. And so that's what I'm doing. Aside from my day job, I co-founded AirShares, which is building technology that makes solving this type of problem more affordable and efficient. Think of it as like a TurboTax experience mixed with an ancestry experience. But essentially, you're building the family tree, and in the background, our powerful algorithms are tracing each event that changed the ownership. We're not replacing lawyers. Instead, what we're doing is helping you have all the materials and data that you need so that when you go to an attorney, you are ready for them to just confirm the owners, and then you can focus more of your resources on the actual strategy and resolving any other issues that can't be addressed through the technology. We will be offering this in beta form in the near future. Unfortunately, Arkansas will not be one of the states that we offer it in beta form. It'll be Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. But our hope is once we do the beta testing and refine the application, that we can then scale it to other states. And I can say that we'll focus on the Southeast first. So that will be coming. And you can still sign up for AirShares listserv, because in addition to our Tree Builder app, we'll also have an educational platform. So this is where you can take self-paced courses that teach you about heirs property, that teach you about real estate, that teach you about planning, succession planning, and so forth. So please do go to airshares.com and join our listserv. And when we launch the educational platform later this year, you will receive a notice about that. And then, of course, once we scale to other states, including Arkansas, you can be informed of that. So that's all. Hopefully I didn't go too far over my time.
Thank you, Mavis. No, you still have 2 minutes, and hopefully we can entertain some questions before we bring on our next guest. Do we have any questions in the chat? Sean, any questions at all?
No questions coming yet, but I'm sure they'll be showing up momentarily. But I do want to take this time to maybe, while people are formulating and typing in their questions, to answer a few questions that were missed in the last section. There was a question from Seven about how can Keep It in the Family assist with appraisals and surveys and things of that nature. I think the best answer here is, and I'm going to put it in the chat, is for those that have not signed up or have not visited the Small Farms Program or the Keep It in the Family website at UAPB. I strongly encourage you to go to the website that I just put in the chat. Look at those contacts, reach out to those individuals. They can give you specifics on what you need and maybe even tailor it specifically for your land, whether it's 13 acres, 80 acres, or 280 acres. So as opposed to me trying to get into all those specifics and financials, I'm going to suggest that you go there to get your answers and reach out to them. Senator Flowers also had a question for Ms. Woods. Who's paying taxes, and do you have plans for a successor upon death or inability? And I think that question is very important. And that was really the crux of Mavis's presentation. So Ms. Woods, hopefully you will take Mavis's presentation if you haven't already, and take those little pearls that speak to succession planning, so that your family can continue the legacy that you've started with minimal interruption. God forbid something happened to you. And I think that was the spirit in which Senator Flowers asked that question. Looking back into the chat box, you know, I call Mavis my shero because she just does an excellent job in explaining a very complicated issue. And there is no shortage of complications when dealing with heirs property. It is a nest. And I'm a little bit of a Machiavellian, and there have been some questions about unresponsive and unlocatable people and relatives. And as long as your spirit is in continuing the legacy and doing no harm, I will tell you that there are ways to address that, that some people might raise an eyebrow at, but that's what you need an attorney for. And they will help you with that $250 an hour to get you those resolutions to dealing with unresponsive and unlocatable individuals. Because the goal is to move it from point A to point B so everybody can benefit and the legacy can continue. So with that,
Can I make a comment? Can I make one quick
by
comment?
all means.
There's a comment here from Senator Flowers about filing and recording in the deeds an affidavit of heirship. I actually did that. I did get with an attorney, and for the people in my grandmother's silo, I was able to get most of them to well, I knew somebody who knew all of us really. And so she was able to sign an affidavit of heirship. So I was able to record that for her family because she had some property, her and my grandfather. So I was able to do that. And also it was attached to this 80 acres because she has interest in that. And I did use the attorney to do that. And I also was able to get some of them to sign a power of attorney to allow me to speak for them. And that's most of the people, again, in my grandmother's silo, which is about 33 people out of the 90. So I'm still working on the others. So yes, affidavit of heirship, power of attorney, those things do help. And you need an attorney for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, those are successes. Okay. Thank you so much. Sean, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I want to thank Mavis, and again, keep those questions coming in. Mavis is going to be around. We've had a change in our schedule. Do you want to speak to that, Deborah, or you want me to run with that?
You can go ahead.
So we've had a little change in our schedule. You know, as I said earlier, technology is great when it works. Our next presenter, or our scheduled next presenter, is having some technical difficulties as a result of traveling and not being in one place. And we regret that she won't be able to present for us this evening, but that means a couple of things. That means, number one, we're going to get out early, and maybe, because I can be long-winded. And number two, we get to bring you one of our really dynamic speakers, and our newest speaker that I'm aware of. We were able to bring him forward a little early. So think of a lot of questions, pay a lot of attention, listen to what he's saying, formulate those questions. So next time he comes back, he says, I got to be prepared for this group because they're going to ask some hard-hitting questions. So with that, Ms. Thrower, would you like to introduce our next speaker?
Yes, thank you, Sean. That's timber. We want to get a timber market outlook, preparing for the next generation by Mr. Chester Fort. He's the Vice President of U.S. Lumber Operations. And if you're on board, Mr. Fort, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you to both of you for the introductions. I'm assuming you can hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can.
Good. I'm actually in a hotel in Auburn, Alabama. So I have about 70 people in a different room waiting on me. So,
Oh, okay.
but it's, I'm glad to be here. My name is Chester Fort, as she said, and I'm the Vice President for West Fraser Company. And I'm responsible for our 22 lumber operations from Texas, Louisiana, all the way over to North Carolina, down into Florida and everywhere in between. And we also have 8 OSB operations in the same said states. Got about 4,500 employees, and we have 2 corporate offices, one in Germantown, Memphis, Tennessee, where I live, and another one in St. Mary's, Georgia. I'm from a small town in Bluff City, Arkansas. I finished school in Prescott, Arkansas, for those that know Arkansas. I've been in the lumber business for next April will make 40 years. So not, I've seen a lot. I've lived through 4 of the recessions that we've been through, with 2008, 9, 10 being the worst, and it just lagged and lagged and lagged. Actually started on a broom and shovel in the basement of a sawmill 40 years ago, for those that just want to know a little bit about me. Married to Loretta for 36 years, and 2 kids and 3 grandkids. I'm just going to speak a bit about the housing market, the industry in total. And, maybe you can ask me some questions if I don't cover what you'd like to know. The housing market is very strong right now. It's about as strong as I've seen it. And all the forecasts show it to be strong going forward. In 2006, we did reach 2 million housing starts. And after that recession, we were very slow, and we made it back, those that remember, we dropped down to 500 some odd thousand. We made it back up to 1 million, 1.2 million, and we just stayed there for year after year after year. In the last 2 years, we've seen a change. COVID has brought a change. A lot of people, when we all got locked up at home, a lot of people started moving out of the inner cities and building homes, and really elevated the housing market. And then as people stayed around home more, there was a lot of repair and remodel work being done. And the unsold homes on the market have finally been minimized. So the housing market is really strong. And the forecast is for it to be strong in the foreseeable future, which is good for the timber industry. The remodel industry and market this year is pretty stagnant, it's stale. And what we see is people, again, have been at home for 2 years, and now we're free to travel, we can cross the border. So most people this year are spending their money on traveling. They're not staying home. And so they're traveling and they're going other places. And so the remodel, if you look, Lowe's and Home Depot just, marketed sales on lumber. And lumber prices in the last 2 years have been very elevated. From us, the manufacturer, they're back normalized now. I don't think it's quite made it to the store yet, but we've seen a significant drop in price from the manufacturer this year. And so that normally takes about 3 months before you start seeing that in the store. So you're hearing that early. That's just started to happen. Very slow recovery. So the last 2 years have been very strong, and COVID's had an impact on that. What else is going on in the market? So in the South, you know, in the foreseeable future, is it good? Some other couple of more points I'll just speak on. When we look at the West Coast, California, and then go up into Canada, all the fires in the West Coast and then the environmental regulations, the timber harvesting in the West Coast has been significantly reduced. And we've seen the same thing in Canada, into BC. You know, so there's three things happen in BC. A lot of fires again. The beetle kill that actually started about 20 years ago has killed a lot of timber in British Columbia. It went over into Alberta somewhat, but not a lot. Alberta is still stable, but there's been a lot of lumber manufacturing facilities closed in the last 10 years in the British of Columbia. And we expect to see more of that in the next 5 years, just because it's 70, you know, we're here, we're 25, 30, maybe 35 years to clear cut a harvest. That's 70 plus years in Canada. And so that forest is going to take a long time to recover. So the expectation is, and again, a lot of this, I should say this, I'm not giving financial advice here, so somebody please don't go no buy a stock based on me. And you know, some of this, the housing starts, the operation closing, those are facts, you know, but a lot of what I'll say, you know, they're our beliefs and they're what we see. But there will be more lumber operations in BC that'll close. And so what does that mean? There's probably going to end up being about 2 billion board feet less coming out of Canada into the US. That volume has to come from somewhere. There's still a need for that lumber. The best place for lumber manufacturers now is in the US South. And so, you know, this is a really good time, in my opinion, to own land. We've seen log costs elevate. We've seen them go from, in some areas that we operate in, we've seen them go up as much as $20 a ton, $30 a ton in some areas. There's some areas in Florida, Georgia that I've never seen log costs as high as they've been in the last 12 months. So, you know, most of that goes to the landowner. There is some increases in the cut and haul fees, and they've increased more here in the last 12 months simply due to fuel pricing and the diesel. And, you know, the logger has to be compensated enough to make a living. So there will be less volume coming out of Canada and the West Coast. That volume will be made up in the US South from Texas, Arkansas, and Mississippi. There are announcements out now of new lumber facilities to equate 2.3 billion board feet. That's a lot of lumber. Now, those announcements are out. Will all of that come to fruition? I would say probably not, but I'm confident 60+% of it will. We just built a new facility in Dudley, Georgia, a new sawmill now. Well, when we built Dudley, Georgia, we started on it 3 years ago. The build takes 2 years to build one. It started up last year and it was about $180 million. We're getting ready to build an almost identical site in Henderson, Texas, and they'll start on it late this year. Dudley was 180 million. Henderson will be 260 million. That's what inflation has done. It's almost $100 million more to build the same site. But so we are building 2 new sites and doing a lot of upgrades to our current sites. So I know, you know, in Arkansas, at Leola, Arkansas, we are going to start a $50 million project there here in the 4th quarter this year to improve that site. We've added a second shift at in Russellville, and it's 22 of these, and so I struggle to keep up with all of them. But my point is, there's a significant amount of volume coming into the US South. Another thing that's happening is that Walmart, you know, Walmart is building a new facility. I call it a small town in Bentonville, Arkansas. and it's going to be all wood. And Walmart is taking a stance that they actually want all the trees that the lumber is produced from to be cut in Arkansas. We have a facility also in Huddock, Arkansas, about 6 miles from the Louisiana line, and they did not purchase from that site because 50% of the timber comes out of Louisiana. Now, so what does that mean? When somebody big, such as a Walmart, does something like that, others will follow. And what does that mean? You know, there's a new term, you know, going around now, you know you've all heard it, called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And it's a feeling that at some point, large companies will need a ESG stamp to do business. Big investors now, banks, start asking companies now before they invest in them, what are you doing to take care of the environment? How do you treat your people? What are you doing to help the communities be sustainable? And if you don't have answers to those, they don't invest in you. And that's becoming more and more significant. And so you're going to hear more of that. We made an announcement to reduce our carbon footprint by 46% by 2030, which is a big step for us. And then the other item that I would just speak to for a minute would be carbon credits. So you've got tech companies such as, you know, maybe Microsoft or some of those, who they're not in the wood industry. We can reduce our carbon footprint, and it's not that bad already because of the tree. But some of these other companies don't. And so there's talk of them actually paying landowners to have their carbon credits. I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know how big that'll become, but that is talk, and there are companies that's doing that. Solar on the land is going to become much larger, and wind where possible. But I expect to see a lot more solar farms come up in the US South. So the ESG advice, that's what's going to happen. So to me, if you have land, this is a great time to own it. The timber pricing is as strong as it's been probably in 30 years. And the future for lumber looks really, really good, minus some event such as, you know, a recession, something extreme, quite frankly, a war, something in this country. It feels as though we're entering the age of anger again. There's so many high profile issues in the media now, and there's so many people tense about so many things. And with fuel prices where they are, a lot of people are living on credit cards, and that's not, none of that is sustainable. And so that is a concern for us as a company, and it's something that we watch, but our forecasts are all good, they're all positive, and they're all strong for the foreseeable future. That's a high level conversation about what I see in the lumber market. And I see something about pine. So everything that we produce is Southern yellow pine. We're not in the hardwood business. So that pricing is for Southern yellow pine. And yes, it is environmental, social, and governance. So what are we doing to take care of the environment? What are we doing to take care of the people, the employees that we work for? And what's our governance around leaving the communities, the areas where we operate, in a better place, and quite frankly, the world and our earth in a better place than what it can be? We can go out and buy carbon credits as a company. We can make a decision to spend money and buy carbon credits. We don't want to personally buy carbon credits. We want to reduce our carbon footprint. That really doesn't reduce the footprint. And so our goal is to reduce the footprint. And I'll say this and I'll let that go, but this is what this means. We're working on a lumber drying project at McDavid now. And we're proposing that to the board in June. Currently, we burn natural gas at McDavid, which is not good for carbon. We can add additional drying capacity for $15 million and continue to burn natural gas. We're spending $42 million to convert that to wood waste. So we're spending more than twice the cost of that original project to move away from gas. And you're going to see other companies do that. So when you start talking about what does it really mean, it's an investment, and it's a dollar amount investment from companies. Any questions?
Yes, we do have a few questions that are coming through, Mr. Fort. And let me just say that that was fascinating to
Yes.
hear your perspective on the outlook for the forest market. It's you confirmed some things that I knew and had heard of, and it's good that mills and timber professionals such as yourself have such a positive outlook on the market. In my other job, when I'm not playing remote landowner, I have great familiarity with what the Walmart people are doing with their corporate headquarters. Is I visit them quite often, and I'm hoping they're going to get some timber out of Howard County, and I've made that known because that's important and near and dear to me. But questions are coming in, and I had a few questions on my own, and I'm sure Dr. Thor may have some questions too. But as a result of my involvement with the forestry people at the University of Arkansas, people like Justin and Joe and Charlie, they've educated me enough to make me dangerous. Mm-hmm. And as a tree farmer, a tree landowner, I've learned the phrase stump pricing. And that's what my ears perk up at, is pump pricing, because I drove them crazy back in 2019 saying, well, I can go to Home Depot and the price of a 2x4 is $20. And it was like $5, 2 months before. And they had to explain to me the relationship between stump pricage, which is when the logs are cut in the field for the most part. And I still may not have this right, so feel free to correct me. But stump pricage versus the price at Home Depot or Lowe's or what have you, Menards. So can you expound on that relationship and why you feel that that stump pricage is going to be, I think you said it's going to be the highest, you've seen it as high as $20 a ton or something of that nature?
No.
Or was I confused? Again, yeah, I know enough to be dangerous, so clear me up.
Let me try to explain this. So in some places where we operate, and this is not Arkansas, Mississippi, or Texas, and I will not name the state, but in some places that we operate, we have paid up to $50 at the stump, what I call stump pricing. Cut and haul pricing, which is what the logger charge, cut and haul the timber, tends to be around $20. It can be 17-ish on full length good timber. It can be 23 to 24 on a first thinning in pulpwood. And so I've seen those have leveled and started to drop some, but I've seen as high, and what I call stump pricing, that's what the landowner get. I've seen as high as $50 at the stump. Okay, now that's level, and that started down a bit, but that correction, my opinion, again, opinion, is probably not going to correct a lot. And so what happens is we pay for the log at our plant, and we pay the amount that the landowner is going to receive, and we also have to pay for the cut and haul, and that's what we pay. And we pay by the ton. So we pay X amount per ton. On average, it takes us 4 tons of logs, 4 tons, to make 1,000 board feet of lumber. So we buy the tree by the ton, pay a certain amount per ton. Once the lumber is produced and sold, we sell it by the 1,000 board feet. It takes 4 tons of log to produce 1,000 board feet. Typically, on average, there's 28 tons of logs on a truck, 28.3, quite frankly, to be exact, on a truck. And so that's what comes in. It's 4 tons to make that. And from that, we make typically 4 products. So we produce the lumber, which is about 60-ish% of the tree. So about 60% of that tree will go into the lumber. About another 8 to 10% will be bark. About 5% will be sawdust, and then there's about 25-ish% left that will be chips. The chips go to the paper mills to produce the paper. The bark is burned in boilers to generate electricity along with the sawdust. But now there are pellet plants that pelletize in some of that and actually going overseas. And then in the finishing plant, as we finish the product, the shavings come off of those, and then they're used in some wood products. But now we have just started up Drax, you may have heard of them. D as in dog, R-A-X. It started up a plant at our Leola site to where they are pelletizing the shavings and shipping those overseas. And you probably may not know this, they're building one at our Russellville, Arkansas plant that's probably going to start up in the next month or so. And so that's where those products go. So when you look at that lumber in the store, that lumber in the store has the cost of the tree paid to the landowner. It's got the cost of the logger. It's got the cost of that manufacturing facility built into it, and then all the transportation to get that where it's going. And then if it's treated lumber, it's got the cost of the treating plant. So you got to ship it to the treating plant, have it treated, and then ship it to the store.
Wow. Interesting. That's quite an education. Thank you. I'm not sure if all our landowners knew the complexity. And yeah, as a tree farm owner, I used to always get concerned about, well, why can't I get more money? And when do I cut? And you know, how much money can I get? And the forestry people can't express the value the way that they like to because of conflict of interest things, and that's not their purpose. They're not there to price it for us. They're to help make us grow. But that's a great explanation. Dr. Thor, did you have some input?
Let me say one thing before that. And you know, one thing I could offer, we'd have to talk about it, but you know, a sawmill is not what it used to be when I started 40 years ago, and we had pull chains and all the manual labor. I'm here. We have a plant now in Opelika, Alabama. We built it. It was about 165 million when it was built. It's air conditioned. And if you would go into a modern day, I don't know, maybe somebody have been, but I would invite you all sometime if you had a group and you could work it out with me to go see a modern day sawmill. It is amazing, the technology. There's very little interaction with humans now. And you know, one of my challenges is to rebrand this and get more females to work in the sawmill and understand that, you know, everybody's in an air-conditioned cab now, and there's 8 control centers up in front of you, and you're punching buttons and you're monitoring. You're not working like you used to. So, you know, I would just offer that to the group, that at some point, if we could agree, you know, the group might just want to go visit. I would offer that invitation to the group, and, you know, we just got to work out a time, a date, and to go see a modern day sawmill. I think you'd be amazed.
Mr. Ford, I'm glad you said that, because we're actually going to take a poll to see what the interest is for. It's either going to be a retreat or a tour or something of that nature, because the information that you shared with us today is just, we've got to do something with it. And so we want to take advantage of those opportunities, but we wanted to assess the needs and get the buy-in from our participants. Sean, is that correct? And so we're going to lead into that. And also We're going to answer a couple of questions in the chat, but I also wanted to make sure that we get feedback from you about how to motivate and engage the next generation. And when we say the next generation, I think people are going to be able to determine what that is. Sometimes we say, oh, that's the younger folks, age blank to blank, but each family member will determine the age of that next generation, because it's sounding like what you're saying is there's a growth industry here, and we need to be on top of that as well, with sending our children and grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, whomever, people in the community, having this conversation about sustainable communities and things like that. As a social work educator, this is my language. But I'm going to pause and make sure we take a couple of questions in the chat. Sean, it looks like George, is solar farming and lumber production mutually exclusive, or can you do both?
We plan to do both. You know,
Okay.
the new site at Henderson will have a solar farm on the roof. So it's a new build, and we just designed that into it, that it will actually have a solar farm in the roof. We have land in Russellville to where we intend to add a solar farm there. So, you know, this is new to us. We've never done this before, but there's a lot of people that know how. There's a lot of smart people in the world. So we can understand it and get there. And again, this is new for us, but in our new build for Henderson, Texas, there will be solar panels on the roof of that building.
Okay, thank you. I think we answered Ms. Doer's question. Was the $20 ton, what it says, was it cited for pine wood or hard? I think you answered that.
Yes, it's everything that we do is pine.
All pine, okay. And then the other comment, I was advised to replant my timber with some type of hybrid pine. Okay, thumbs up, that grows off in 6 years. Any advice?
I mean, I don't know what that type of hybrid pine is, so I couldn't answer that. But I've got people that work for me that's very smart on that, and they can answer it. So I would have to understand what that is. You know, when you start talking growing timber, you know, companies like Weyerhaeuser have really got the genetics figured out, and they do a really good job at that. But our director of forestry, I have to punt that to somebody like that. And I don't know what the hybrid is. There's a lot of different hybrids out there.
Okay.
Unmute yourself, Justin, if you'd like to speak to that.
And then we'll get Stephanie. Senator, go ahead.
You saw me typing, didn't you? Sorry if there's a lot of noise going on. So what they're referring to is actually genetically superior trees, not genetically modified, as you might think. They're referring to trees that have been grown. It's a lot like we do with crops, with wheat, tomatoes, everything else. Is you want to leave the superb trees in your breeding stock, and you want to remove the stuff that gives you issues. So that's what they're referring to. As, and to give an example, the Arkansas Department of Agriculture Forestry Division have mixed loblolly pine. They have 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star. Each one of those is where they went in and they've removed things that caused issues, didn't have great growth rates, had defects that were showing up. That's what they're referring to. And yes, I highly recommend that. If you're looking for fiber, as far as like paper and stuff like that, growing superior trees, they're going to have less defects. They're going to get you more money, and they're going to grow faster. But I don't want to hijack this presentation, so I'll jump off.
And you know, my response to that at a high level is yes. You know, but everybody's genetics are a little different, and that's why I pause.
If I could throw in a interjection, in Arkansas, I think the 6 years, I don't know exactly what they mean by that, but you're normally looking at about 12 to 15 years before you can do a first thinning, even on, you know, the best seedlings that you can acquire. So I don't know, I think somebody may be giving a little bit of false information if they're saying the trees will grow off in 6 years, but that's, as a forester, that's just my opinion. So,
well, my opinion is I've not seen any tree ready to thin in 6 years. It's 12 to 14.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for that. We have one other question. Sean, do you want to take it or you want me to take it?
Go for it. Which one is
Okay,
that?
so it says, is that the Stephanie Flowers representative? It says, sound like the timber companies are doing pretty well. Why then would a pellet company need to get money from the state? Okay, somebody's moving from the state as one company in Pine Bluff is getting. That's the question. Seems like the company should sustain itself.
Yeah, I mean, that company, I don't know, and I'm unable to answer that question.
Okay,
I don't know
okay.
that, but I will just always throw this plug in, in our Russellville and Mansfield, just south of Fort Smith plants, a lot of our timber come from the national forest, and a managed forest is a good forest, and you don't hardly ever have fires on them. So I kind of always throw that plug in, is help us help our government to manage the forest, and then it's a great revenue stream also for the government.
I do have one question, Mr. Fort, because I've spent a lot of time with my farm getting various certifications. Do sawmills look at certified, and I'll defer to our two experts that spoke earlier, Joe Friend and or Justin Mallett. I go through and I get it certified. Do mills pay more for a certified farm than a farm that isn't? Or are you guys going to take a move in that direction? Maybe that's the question, because I think I know the answer. You don't, but are you going to look toward rewarding us when we certify?
Very good question. And so certification does matter. And what tends to happen is companies like us, we just don't buy it. And you end up selling it to somebody that pays you a lot less for it. And so, and I'm not telling you to certify or to not certify, but SFI and other certifications, they absolutely matter. And it's absolutely looked at, and it's absolutely a criteria for purchasing that's considered on every tree that we purchase.
Great. Hey, well, we've got a question to answer. We're going to hold you to that visit. I'm actually going to be in Arkansas the first week in July. I can't plan a tour then, but maybe in October or November, we can get a group together, and I'd love to see a facility and see how it goes. And we thank you for being so flexible with your time and helping us out through our little.
Yeah, and I just say, as we close, I mean, to also encourage people to go into the business. My first job, I made $2.90 an hour. I make a decent living now, and so I've gone from the lowest job in the business to the highest, in charge of the largest lumber manufacturing company, quite frankly, in the world. And other people can do that. And I think what people don't realize is that we have forestry positions that start at $60,000 a year in all these jobs and go up. And they all got 401k, full benefit packages. We got reliability, other engineers from 65 up, management trainees, 50 up. I mean, just look at the industry. It's a big industry. And we've got a great partnership with UAPB, been recruiting, hiring a lot of young people, and they don't have to move to California and they don't have to move to Chicago to get really good jobs. So, I just would love to see more people and a lot more diversity in our.
Mr. Fort, on that note, we are looking to engage the youth to present these just like they would present engineers and doctors and lawyers and educators. What we want to do is take that challenge that you're talking about and present it to youth and start having this conversation about career opportunities. So, and as particularly as it relates to diversity and the inclusiveness of females as well, as you said, that the opportunities are there. So we're gonna keep that at the forefront. For sustainability, we're going to keep that at the forefront. Thank you for challenging us. So I think that question said, the questions are still coming in. What defines a certified farm?
I'm going to ask Justin to speak to that question in the chat, and we're going to move on.
Mr. Ford, we can't thank you enough. We're extremely appreciative, and Mavis says she's got to jump off in 1 minute. She didn't know if anybody had any final questions. She may have already jumped off because she has another commitment. We thank her for her presentation and information. And now we're going to move in, if there's nothing else. Thank you again, Mr. Fort. We're going to move into the conservation programs with Charlie Mr. Charlie Williams at UAPB, understanding the importance and task 1 conservation consulting. Mr. Williams, thanks for your patience.
Thank you for having me on. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you and we can see your presentation, your slide as well.
Okay, if I can, yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Task 1 conservation consulting.
Okay. Again, thank you for having me on, and I am retired. I'm retired from USDA, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, after 44 years of work. And one of my main goals was to ensure that the services that we provided made it to all of the landowners. There's one thing that is glaringly clear. Very few of Americans own farmland and operate farmland, but all Americans need the resources that you provide in that farmland. And so with that in mind, it's a security issue for the United States that this land is managed, that erosion of any kind does not occur, and the productivity of that land will continue to increase. And so since the 1930s, the Department of Agriculture has looked at how the best ways to provide technical and financial assistance to partner with landowners that use the land. And so this assistance is provided in what we call farm bills. The farm bills looked at every 5 years. And the current farm bill is looked at, and it is, there's some things that are added to it and some things that are taken away. And so with that, I'll go ahead and get into my presentation.
Okay.
The President of the United States signs the farm bills. The current farm bill we're under was signed December 20th, 2018. And this farm bill will be active until 2023. And again, it is the program of the type of assistance that the Department of Agriculture desire to work directly with you, right beside you as you are working your land. And out of that farm bill come assistance programs such as the Keeping It in the Family program. So it can work with you receiving funds and assistance as a farmer, and it can assist in aiding other organizations to kind of fill in the gaps where the federal individuals may not be able to, let's say, get to you in time, or do not have the flexibility and time to assist you with all the ways that you need to be assisted. The Farm Bill, again, it helps with agriculture and food, provide agriculture and food policy tools. Our congressional delegations get together every 5 years, and they put together what we call the omnibus bill, which contains a lot of different information and types of assistance. Again, as the bills come about, certain things are reauthorized, certain things are amended, some things are repealed. So it's a very active process. It is good for you to know your congressional delegation and to voice your concerns about what is important to you. There is certain mandatory spending in the farm bills, and pretty much it covers nutrition. And let me say, and we will show it again in a little bit, nutrition covers the majority of the farm bill. You may have heard it in the past in your farm bill legislation coverage that they were interested in taking nutrition out of the Farm Bill. It is, again, the biggest piece of pie that is in the Farm Bill. But this Farm Bill, it says the cost of implementing this Farm Bill is $867 billion. That is a projection over a 10-year period. Over the 5-year period, we're looking at about $428 billion. And it says that that's about $1.8 billion above the baseline scenario. So it is big bucks in the Farm Bill program. Again, out of that $428 billion covering 2019 to 2023, $326 billion of that, or 76%, is in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what we call SNAP. The remaining 24% or $102 billion are further outlaid into what we're mentioning here. Agriculture programs, crop insurance, commodity programs, and we will highlight, out of all of that, we will highlight conservation because that is the focus of this particular presentation. Out of the commodity programs, those are the areas that the funds will go to, and pretty much what we will concentrate on is agriculture conservation, but that rural development, the old Farmers Home Administration that you may have heard of years ago, that is that program. And for those of you in rural communities, we generally looking at communities 50,000 in population or less. It is said that there are rural development programs that can build a city from the ground up. So there's all kinds of assistance that are available through rural development. But again, what we will concentrate mostly on is agriculture, conservation, and of course, in particular with this program, forestry. We would like to highlight though that veterans are considered special in the Farm Bill, and there are special programs that help with veteran farmers. Okay, out of in looking at the projected outlays under the 2018 Farm Bill, we highlighted that 262 would be in the nutrition program, but look at conservation there. Conservation get about $29 billion to support the offices and also what parts of that can actually be provided as financial assistance to assist landowners to install conservation practices on their land. Forestry has 0.01% there of $1 billion there. So that is what comes to forestry. And moving on to types of conservation programs, which is Title II in the Farm Bill. The primary assistance that is given to a farmer, that you can develop a contract with USDA is the EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and the Conservation Stewardship Program. Those are the two programs that you can get assistance to install the conservation practices such as tree planting, timber stand improvement, fire lanes. The funds to do that will come either out of the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, EQIP, or the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP. But all of the other programs that I have listed here, they receive funds from the out of the conservation portion of the Farm Bill. And so as we begin to look at some of what the conservation aspects does, the broader groups are working lands programs, when the environmental quality incentive program and CSP are both in that working lands program, and we also provide technical assistance. Those are the high areas that we provide assistance in. The Working Lands Program, as I mentioned, and again, that is the program that we, as you work the land, we want to help work beside you. We believe that production and environmental issues can work hand in hand. We believe you can increase the production on your lands so that you can again stay in business as you are a farmer, but we have to assure that the environmental resources are protected as well. And we believe that we can do both. You can continue to increase your production, and we can continue to protect the environment. And so the major Working Lands Program, again, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program and the Conservation Stewardship Program. Speaking of, allow me to use EQIP from this point on. And of course, that is the program that you are able to receive financial and technical assistance. We help with structures. We can build farm ponds. We can build, help you with pipe drops, those type of structural practices. And then there are vegetative practices. We help you, we'll provide information to help you install those, how to plant those, how to manage those. We provide assistance with land management. That's what we are prepared to do. And all of those, again, come out from under the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. Okay, and to mention that the production and environmental quality are compatible goals. Yes, we do have to make sure that we are operating under any regulatory requirements. We have to, but we try to help you manage your land so there will be no need for any regulatory requirements. But we know the personality of mankind. We will drive something to extinction if we are not held accountable. So there has to be a voice to help protect the environment, and we will help to do that. Again, we help you to install and maintain conservation practice on your land. So if you're interested in planting grass, you're interested in planting trees, we'll be able to provide you with the assistance to help you do it and protect the environment. As far as our assistance to forestry, the Natural Resources Conservation itself does not have the personnel to assist in writing all of the forest management plans of the various types. And so we subcontract out in Arkansas with the Arkansas Division of Forestry to write those plans. So we partner with other agencies so that we can help get the job done. And of course, when we make recommendations to you. This what we're looking at here pretty much involves the site visits that we make on the land. We believe this is one of the best services that we can provide to you. The personnel, when I was a district conservationist, I started back in the 1980s. I had a whole lot more time to go out and visit the landowner to provide that on-site technical assistance. But since then, the number of employees has gone down, but the workload has increased. We are having to helping to install these conservation practices now using federal funds, which those federal funds were not available at the time. And so that those conservation personnel in those offices many times does not have the time that we used to have to go out and do the farm visits. And so that's one reason why the Keeping It in the Family program is very helpful to landowners right now, because we can help prepare you for the to help you understand the programs and to help you apply for those programs. And so in the Farm Bill, certain things came out in the previous Farm Bill, but they are still in this Farm Bill. And so certain farmers I'd like to highlight, that is the focus of this particular presentation. 5% goes to beginning farmers and ranchers. 5% of that $29 billion must go to the socially disadvantaged landowners. And so Farm Bills has evolved where they recognize that many times it is very difficult if you have not have been installing conservation practices on your land for a long time, you do not compete well with those who have. And so now we have somewhat of a earmark to assure that that's not a good word, because we're not earmarking funds anymore, but we are designating that at least this percentage of the investment will go to beginning farmers and socially disadvantaged farmers. That is a big thumbs up for the farmers. And now we've been speaking of the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, now moving on to the Conservation Stewardship Program. After you have done EQIP and you want to raise the level of conservation on your property, then you get a chance to do apply more conservation practice to the land. It is kind of a reward for doing good conservation on your land. And there are particular conservation practices that you can install on your land to even make your land more productive and make it more environmental friendly. And that is there are funds set aside in the Conservation Stewardship Program to assist with that. As far as forestry, again, most of this work is being carried out by the Forest Service. Of course, they manage the federal lands, and of course, some assistance also out of that forestry funds go to state agencies so that they can help run their programs within the state. Again, I am Charlie Williams. I am Task One LLC. That is my contact information, and I'll entertain questions if you have some.
Well, Mr. Williams, as usual, you have been a wealth of knowledge, and I hope everyone was paying attention to what was said there, and there was a lot there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to some of Mr. Williams' cohorts and his team and colleagues that work very importantly with him. There was a question earlier talking about the certification of timber and farms. That's not an answer that can be given in the time that we have remaining. But I encourage you to reach out to the other consultants that are on the line, on the webinar in their own capacity. I gave the link to the Small Farms Program and Keep It in the Family, and Charlie and Justin Mallet, Joseph Friend, Candy Williams, Lavelle Foote, that team right there. If you're in the state of Arkansas and you want to know how to handle your heirs property and heirs timber, that's the group you want to have as a nucleus. And I will tell you from my own personal experience, they actually make you feel like family, and they make you feel like your land is their land. They give it that special hands-on attention that is missing in today's world of help and service providers coming out. We're going to take some questions and we're going to ask some questions. So Karen, if you would start the poll and make it available for the attendees that are out there to start taking the poll. And again, I hope you were listening to everybody and their presentations. These questions are designed to give us input, as I said earlier, into your needs and how we can best provide content for you and resources. So it's important that you answer these questions and be short. Don't write a novel. Most of them are yes or no. I always, my biggest pet peeve in life is I ask people a question: what time is it? Well, this watch is an Apple Watch and it's got a black band and I've got it on Bluetooth and I've had it for 6 years. And this is a very nice watch. I appreciate all that, but I simply asked you what time it was. So the questions in the poll are designed to be yes or no answers. Please keep your answers short because that helps to analyze the information. If you get to telling me that it's an Apple Watch and you got it 6 months ago, it was a birthday present from your great nephew, that's nice information, but that doesn't help us a lot.
And I want to apologize. I keep trying to pull up the poll and for some reason it won't come up. So I don't know what's going on. So to deal with that problem, if you would, I can probably get your email addresses, but some people have called in. I would love for you to put your email addresses in the chat box or email me at leek@uapb.edu, and I will send everyone the poll questions and then we can get them that way. That way we won't miss out on it. I can send it to everyone and I'll just get it back. I'll make the document so that you could just fill it out online and just send it back so there won't be any issues. And I see people are putting that in there and I apologize because I don't know what's going on.
It's technology, Karen, as good as we are. It's technology, right? What I do want to take time to do, and again, I appreciate everybody filling out that information, but I do want to share this document. And again, I put in the Arkansas, the Keep It in the Family link. So we've talked about, Mr. Williams spoke a lot about conservation programs and how the Keep It in the Family team comes out to your site. They will engage you, but they need information. And if you go to that website and contact them, they're going to ask you to fill out a landowner profile. And Candy, if I'm out of school here, feel free to send me a text and say, no, stop. But this is a very valuable form. It gives them the information to help you so that they can do those site visits, so they can help you do a forest management plan. You know, Ms. Woods was talking about how she's doing her family tree. The other part of this is being able to get a forest management plan, which is going to be critical. And that's why we ask questions about, do you have clear goals for your timber? And working with the specialists at Keep It in the Family, they can do a forest management plan that can help you stop just talking about doing something, but give you a tangible document that that works for you. So I just wanted to share that and make you aware of the fact that that's available at the site that I sent in earlier to get that application process going. Is that cool, Candy? Did I screw that up? That's not going to cause a problem. Well, Dr. Thor, I think you being the educator here, it's time for homework.
It's time for homework. I'm sorry that educator just comes out of me. We did hear that some people are, of course, interested in connecting with Mr. Ford as far as some type of tour or a retreat or something of that nature, connecting in a more meaningful way. But we're also talking about accepting his challenge with cultivating connections with the next generation. Cultivating connections with the next generation. He talked about opportunities for females. He talked about opportunities for youth and even opportunities for ourselves. And so if you would, not being coerced as Ms. Dorr said, but if you would like to take advantage of those opportunities, our next session, we anticipated being the first week of August. Haven't narrowed down the date yet, but we're looking at the first week of August for you to come back and present in some light with a plan and increasing your knowledge and skills, but with the focus of cultivating connections with the next generation. Do we have any takers? Anybody who might be interested in this regard? I see some people who said, let me know when the retreat is. I'll be there. Let me take it to the next level. And people are providing their email addresses. We certainly anticipate providing the slides to you. I see that was a request as well. And we're at the top of the hour. It's 8:57. So I'll look in the chat to see if anyone wants to follow Ms. Dorr's lead with a homework assignment.
Well, I know we've got at least one gentleman out there that's interested. So I hope we get about a dozen to do presentations, because again, this is peer-to-peer. This is how
Yes, it is.
we grow because we leverage the information, we build on each other's experiences, and that's how we really become successful. We build that co-op, we build that coalition, we learn from others' mistakes. Let's face it, I've made mistakes, and thank God I had Justin and Candy and Joe and Karen to keep me from doing crazy stuff. And again, the programs are cost share programs out there, but they're really out there to make you sustainable. This isn't crack, okay? This is for you to develop muscle tone and stamina as a forest landowner to make your land profitable and to build that legacy. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up. I want to acknowledge the fact that we had one of Arkansas's greatest, in my opinion, greatest legislators, and I'm biased because I know her dad and her dad knew my dad, but we had Senator Flowers in the audience, and she was listening, and she was reacting to those poll questions. And that's why the poll questions are important, because Mr. Williams spoke to it earlier. You have to know your representatives, because they are going to be critical in funding agencies and supporting you when the ills of the past cause problems and there needs to be legislation to fix it. The better informed we keep our legislators and the more we communicate them, and they can again discern the essence of what their constituents are asking for, that's critical. And again, we thank Senator Flowers for being in attendance. I wanted to make her aware of that. I want to acknowledge all the UAPB staff and consultants and assets and valuable into VIPs as far as I'm concerned. They do so much for us remote landowners and on the ground landowners. Can't thank you guys enough. And most definitely want to thank Dr. English, who has put together such a great team, and the University of Arkansas and the whole academic staff. I really appreciate you. And I'm sure that there are additional landowners out there that appreciate you. Dr. Thor, closing words?
Closing words, I just wanted to thank everybody for their time. And I wanted to acknowledge Mr. Lavelle Foote. I see he's in the panel screen as well. And I look forward to someone accepting the challenges that Mr. Fort laid out for us. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
I would
Good
also
night.
like to say to anyone, I just want to say again, my email address, especially for those who are on the phone, my email address again is LEEK, like the vegetable, leek, at uapb.edu. Again, LEEK at uapb.edu. My phone number is area code 870-575-7225. Again, 870-575-7225. So you can also call me and I will get your email and be able to send that to you again as well, because we really do want to get that survey out there. And again, I want to thank the team. I want to thank Candy Williams. She's our outreach coordinator. I want to thank Justin Mallet. He's our forestry consultant. I want to thank Joseph Friend. He's our forestry consultant. I thank Charlie Williams, one of our speakers. He's our conservation consultant. And Lavelle Foote, he's our other conservation consultant. Great team, great work. Yvette Browning was not able to join us, but she works with the Arkansas Department of Agriculture with their forestry department, and they have been super supportive of our endeavors. So I cannot not mention her. So again, want to just thank everyone and please reach out to us.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Have a good evening.